The New York Mets may have just gotten one step closer to adding a superstar in the infield, and Ken Rosenthal gives us the latest breakdown on where the Mets can attack to add to this starting pitching staff next on MetCast. Welcome back to the channel, friends. As always, I am Ray, and if you like our content, please, we ask you humbly to like and subscribe. Help us get to our subscriber goal of 2,500 solid Mets fans. As always, it's great to interact with you. If you have a comment during this entire section of clips, of storylines that we're going to be going through, please feel free to leave a comment below. I try to get back to each and every single one of you and use it as a forum. Love going back and forth with you, but let's get right into it. So here's how we're going to start off. The New York Mets may have gotten closer to adding a superstar, and yes, it is Alex Bregman. Alex Bregman, according to Jeff Passan, this is per BR, walk-off. The Astros don't want to make Alex Bregman an offer over 6 years per Jeff Passan. And in my mind, I think he's going to get 7, maybe even 8 years, and a team's going to have to acknowledge that the last year or two, they're just going to have to bite the bullet. That's what I truly feel in regard to that. Bregman's a great player. You probably have the Yankees, the Red Sox. We heard the Mets even checked in on him, and maybe even the Orioles getting involved. But I still think if this Pete Alonso stuff does not work out the way that David Stearns wants it to work out, I could absolutely see him pivoting to Bregman. Now, as a Mets fan, it kills me. It rips my heart out. Pete is a Mets fan. He is a LFGM type of guy. He loves being here, but here are the X's and O's. David Stearns, when it comes down to everything, he is not in it for the emotions. You've seen it with a lot of his stuff lately. He let Severino walk. A lot of Met fans fell in love with Severino. He was the guy holding the OMG sign. Had a very solid season for us, but at the end of the day, you had to say sayonara to him. Now on to the next story. Ken Rosenthal had a very interesting segment. What I was told, I have not heard this yet. I'll be reacting live with you guys to this. Let's give it a listen.
Let's talk about this Mets group, though, Ken. Do they need to add another piece to that starting rotation? When you think of the Mets, you now think of Juan Soto, but there's 25 other spots that need to be good enough to get into that postseason.
Alana, unequivocally, the answer is yes. And they added Griffin Canning last night.
I hear about the Canning deal. The guy's just not good. And he'll remain that way until proven otherwise. He's been in the league for a while, got cut last year, ERA over 5, wasn't suiting it. If he is anywhere near the starting rotation, we are in deep you-know-what.
Moved around the edges with their rotation the entire offseason. Signed Frankie Montas, hasn't had a good...
I totally agree. Think about it. We haven't added one solid starter to this rotation. Frankie Montas, another project guy. Canning, another project guy. It's project. When are these frontline starters going to be here? And for me, Manaea is not enough. You need to add on top of him. But I have a special segment after this in regard to that, but let's keep listening.
Run since the first half of 22. Signed Clay Holmes. Want to convert him from...
Another around the option. There's no guarantee that Clay Holmes is going to be a stud starting pitcher for us. At the end of the day, we don't know. We know he could be solid in the bullpen, but another gamble. So for me, I don't view him as a 1, 2, or 3 starter on this staff. I view him as a 4 or 5 starter until proven otherwise. I am all about the proven guy. That's why I'm so adamant about bringing in Pete Alonso back. Christian Walker would be a great option, but we don't know what he could do in New York. We've seen Pete hit in big moments. The Milwaukee series this past year, yes, he sucked. Flat out, he sucked. But at the end of the day, him sucking is still way better than half the first baseman throughout MLB. And that's what you have to take into consideration. It's a contract year. Pete was most likely pressing throughout the year and last year because they were talking about a contract last year. Hopefully, once he's signed, he settles down. There's more protection in the lineup with a guy like Juan Soto and Mark Vientos having another year under his belt. I could see Pete Alonso going back to that 40-plus homer guy. If you're telling me he's going to hit 245 to 250 with 40-plus homers, I'm taking it all day long.
The bullpen to starting rotation spot. These are all interesting moves, but they need one more guy and one more good start.
I disagree. We need 2 more guys. You want to tell me it's Castillo and Minaya? I'll take it to the bank. But Minaya just coming back, that is not enough. You're replacing Severino with Frankie Montas, who, let's be honest, guys, he has not been good in a few years. He was okay with Milwaukee, but that was such a small stint. He wasn't even that good in the playoffs, let's be honest. So you need to add 2 legitimate. You want to tell me you're going to add Minaya and another number 2 starter? Then I'm listening. But Minaya, Senga, Peterson, that's not scaring anybody. Let's just call a spade a spade.
Starting pitcher. It could be Sean Manaea coming back. It could be Walker Buehler if he is someone.
You want to tell me you're going to give Buehler a 3-year contract with an opt-out after 1, 3 years, $65 million opt-out after 1, and Sean Manaea? I'd probably settle for that because you're not giving up prospects, but then I would expect us to be trading to get better in this lineup. Maybe you take that money saved and you go get a guy like Jock Peterson.
One the Mets identify, but it's really interesting to see how the Mets have gone about this. And let's look at where they are with their rotation right now. You see the top 4, Senga, Montas, Peterson, and Holmes.
There's really one bona fide guy in there in Senga. Peterson had a great year last year, but he's been in the league for a while. He needs to do it more than 1 year for me. Blackburn, he stinks. Canning, he stinks. McGill, he stinks. Budo, he intrigues me. I think he prefers being a long man. There was a story saying that he liked coming out of the bullpen. Clay Holmes, we don't know. Frankie Montas, he has stunk. So out of all these guys, 4 of them have stunk. And until otherwise, they got to prove that they could be major league caliber on this team.
Okay, not great. Then Blackburn, Canning, McGill, and Jose Buto, they are the depth guys who could fill in. David Stearns, both in Milwaukee and now in New York, has not been someone willing to go long-term with pitchers. That's why you're not hearing the Mets with Corbin Burns, though, of course, if Steve Cohen wants Corbin Burns, Steve Cohen will get Corbin Burns. But Stearns is
music to our ears, boys, right?
Not like to go in that direction. And of course, last year, they were extremely successful with their short-term deals with Minaya and Luis Severino. It's tough to do that every year.
That's my point. You're 2 for 2 right now with Stearns. Now you're trying with Canning and Frankie Montas. What are the odds you're going to go 4 for 4? Slim to none?
It's tough to kind of hit the jackpot with these guys every year, but this is the way the Mets are going. They also have some prospects coming along. Is it a playoff caliber rotation as we sit here today? I would suggest the answer to that is no.
And that's what scares the ever-living hell out of me. Will David Stearns be able to pull it together and get the pitchers necessary for this rotation? And now the guys over at One Mets Pod have a potential trade that I haven't looked at. I'm just presuming because I've seen Drew Gilbert in their headline. If I had to guess, it'd be Drew Gilbert straight up for Luis Castillo. I'm not doing that trade. You're taking on that entire contract. Not many teams can do it. Seattle's trying to get rid of that salary. So if it was me, I am not giving up Drew Gilbert. I'll give up a lesser prospect, but Drew Gilbert, who will probably end up being our center fielder this year, because we all know Siri is god-awful at the plate. And if this team ever stops hitting at some point, you'll see them make the move. But let's give their podcast a listen, and we'll react live with you.
What is Gilbert's role now that the corner outfield is locked in for the foreseeable future? It seems like the Mets view Williams, of course, Jet, and Acuna as possible center fielders moving forward. Would Gilbert move the needle in a starting pitcher trade? Obviously, we've touched on the fact he could be in one in our scenarios, Joe. But what do you think? What is the scenario when they keep Gilbert? I think that's a good starting point.
By the way, Gilbert's 24 now, or going to be 24. Either 24 or he's going to be 24 very shortly. It's time to bring him up.
Because we discussed the trade possibilities a little bit already.
So I will be writing an article in the coming days of the impact the Juan Soto move has on the farm system. And this is kind of a perfect segue into what that piece will be all about.
And if anybody knows, Joe DeMayo knows everything there is to know about Mets prospects. Make sure you give him a follow over on X.
Now, Drew Gilbert at this point is looking like a tougher fit than he was a month ago. It's not that Drew Gilbert can't play center field, because he can. I think there are just better athletes in Jet Williams and Luis Angel Acuna, who I think profile a little better in center than Gilbert does. And Gilbert's biggest strength defensively is his arm strength, and that typically plays in right field. And I think there are some people throughout the sport that believe he can play center, but he'd be a better right fielder. And if that's the case, and the Mets ultimately see him that way, then I don't know where he's going to fit. And maybe he does fit in a trade for a Luis Castillo, a Dylan Cease. There's so many pitchers available. Jesus Luzardo. Like, there's so many pitchers that are available that maybe we're not even aware are available.
People have been bumping up Luzardo for forever. The guy's awful. Go look at his stats with Miami. He's not good. A lot of teams fall in love with him. He's a hard-throwing lefty. At the end of the day, he just simply wasn't good last year.
And
Right.
I wonder if the Juan Soto move doesn't necessarily push Drew Gilbert out the door, but makes his fit just a little more convoluted.
I agree with him. And they had an article, or they did a segment in their podcast that Drew Gilbert might be moved for Luis Castillo. I personally think that Drew Gilbert could absolutely play center field. He's a pretty good athlete. Maybe not as great an athlete as Acuna and Jet Williams, but at the end of the day, he'd be plenty serviceable. He's an absolute cannon, and that's something that we don't have right now in the outfield in regard to Jet Williams, Acuna, Brandon Nimmo, of the likes. I would like him out there, especially his bat. His bat is ready. We could all sit here and say Jet Williams. The facts are he's 21 years old. He's probably a couple years away from coming up. I know there were rumors last year about him coming up, but at the end of the day, David Stearns is not going to bring up a 21-year-old to play center field. Maybe Gilbert gets a taste of center field. If you don't like him there, maybe you look to move him, but I would absolutely be having him playing center field in the minors, seeing how it's working out. We know he played center field in the past. Didn't have any troubles with it. Drew Gilbert, let me give you a little profile. He's a smaller guy, stockier guy, projects to have the power, has a bit of speed, has a cannon in the outfield. But one thing he has above all is heart. He is one of those fiery, rah-rah guys. He wants to win at absolute any cost, and that's what attracted the Houston Astros to him in the first round a few years ago before being included in part of the Justin Verlander trade to the New York Mets. And obviously, he was the best piece that they sent over. Their only top 100 prospect at the time. But that's my view on it. Let me know if you guys would trade him for a starting pitcher. And if so, who? I mean, Luzardo, I'm out. Castillo, I'm out. Maybe there's somebody else I'm missing. You want to talk Dylan Cease? Maybe we could talk about that. But for those other two guys, I'm probably not, especially considering that Castillo's velocity has started to come down as he goes throughout his age 30s into his 30s. But maybe I'm wrong. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Again, if you like this content, please like and subscribe. I humbly ask you to. It helps out the channel greatly. Be sure to share it with a friend and give us a follow over at XN. If you have any personal questions about the team you want to ask us, maybe some of our guests that we have on or have had on. I'm trying to get Terry Collins back on the show. We had him on last year. If you have questions for people like that, feel free to shoot us a direct message over on Twitter at MetCast Pod. We also do the Jets side, but at MetCast Pod, we'll be sure to answer any of your questions, maybe pass along a question or two to some of the guests that we've had on in the past. Thank you guys so much for hanging out, and until next time, take care.